Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to our webinar. I'm Michael and Trevor Toll, the Marketing Manager for Solution Systems Inc. Today we have customers and others attending this webinar, so just a bit about Solution Systems before we begin. We are located in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, and we have been in business for 35 years providing software, IT infrastructure, and web development to organizations in the Chicagoland area, as well as Wisconsin, Indiana, and the Midwest region. We are a Gold Certified Microsoft partner. We sell, implement, and support an ERP software called Microsoft Dynamics NAV. NAV is a business accounting software that is geared toward manufacturers, distributors, and service companies. We also sell, implement, and support CRM as well as outsource IT services to our customers. Today we are very fortunate to have Rick Baxter with us from Cost Control Software, and he will be conducting this overview. So I'm going to pass it over to him so we can get started with that.
Got the recorder started? Yes. Okay. So again, my name is Rick Baxter with Cost Control Software. We're going to take a look today at the ExpandIT Mobile Service Solution. I'm real excited to show that to you. Have a guest speaker today. It's going to be Sheldon Adelson with ExpandIT, the company, and he's got about a 45-minute presentation to show you some of the features, and then at the end we'll talk about some of the next steps. If you like what you see, and we certainly hope you do, we'll talk about what the next steps would be. I will mention on the call today, I noticed when people signed up, we had a pretty big mix of both NAV resellers as well as end users, and quite a few prospective end users of NAV software. And certainly after today's session, if you have additional questions, I'll put up my contact information, or I think I will at the end. But you can always go to costcontrolsoftware.com and use the contact us or use the chat line, and we can move this conversation forward from there. Okay, so let's get started. Thanks again. I've got 19 wonderful for you to join in today. I've checked the sound. Everybody seems to be able to hear me and see my screen. So let's get started. I'm going to go to the next slide. I'm going to try to go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, so the first thing is I want to separate product versus service. So as we're looking at this software, I want you to think in terms of product versus service and think of your own business. And you may have a mix, but product-driven businesses like a manufacturing company, they send the job to the resources. So in the factory, you have all of your resources, whether it's a machine or whether it's people, and they're working on the job to produce whatever finished good it is that you're making. That's different than a service-driven business or a service department within your product division, where you're sending the resource to the job. So understand there's a pretty major difference here. You have a technician that goes out in the field. That's why the picture of the road. They're on the road, and they're going to be doing some service for a product out in the field, not typically in the office. So let's think in terms of the workflow. It's very important to think what happens. So a service request or a preventative maintenance contract comes up due. Either somebody calls in and says, hey, something's broken, please come fix it, or you've got a preventative maintenance contract with that customer and it's time to go do maybe an oil change or change filters, batteries, whatever it might be. So that kind of initiates the need for some service work. So either they just call in or you've got a contract with some follow-up service dates that are in the NAV side. This is in the NAV side. If it is a new service request, that's typically then number 2 here, just entered in NAV Service Management. So you go into Service Management, you click on Service Orders, and you put in a new service order, and then we'll talk about how the technician picks that up. Sheldon will do a little example of that, showing new service orders for the technician to go out and do whatever repair is needed. The third step is that it is sent to the dispatch board for tracking and assigning to the technician. So once the call is entered, the service order or service call is entered, it needs to be dispatched to the technician to do the work. So we really focus heavily on this dispatch board, and we're going to show you a bunch of that here in just a second. The next step, number 4, is obviously the technician's got to go and do the work. It's like, it's almost duh. The tech's got to go out and do whatever work's required and record whatever materials are typically used at that stage as well. So the technician records the work on typically their mobile device, like an iPad or a tough book or something that they have in the truck, to record what work they have completed, how many hours, maybe mileage, and certainly materials used would be recorded on their mobile device, and we're going to show you that as well. And then finally, that is then sent back to the back office, and the billing is generated in the NAV side. So it kind of starts from NAV, it moves into the ExpandIT solution for all of that dispatching and generation of recording the work, and then it's eventually, the last step is you're going to email the invoice to the customer. Makes sense? You're going to send the invoice for the work that you've just done. So that kind of completes that workflow process. Now, the focus that we're going to be looking at is we want to keep the technicians very productive. When you have a service department, you really don't want the technicians to come into the office in the morning. You want them to go right to that first call. There's no point having a service tech come to the office to pick up what service orders they got to work on. That's a tremendous waste of time. So the tech in the morning goes straight to that customer's first call, or maybe he's there, but whenever we can keep that technician on productive time, on billable time, absolutely we're going to improve our margins. We're going to improve our customer satisfaction, better market share, and certainly more revenue for the business, because we've got that service technician out in the field on productive time as many hours of the day as we possibly can, rather than have them sitting around in the office, you know, in non-productive kind of work. So we're going to show all these things. Okay, here's the big difference. And this is an interesting slide. This is yesterday and today. Yesterday, look on the left side here. This is the old method. I mean, a service tech would have a sheet of things that they're supposed to go and do or repair. They'd have a little adding machine so to generate maybe a paper tape and record the work that was done out in the field. Today, technology has made what you're going to see here very available to us, and that's this example with the iPad is a perfect example of being able to give information to your technicians through the technology today. That's what this is really all about. Okay, now I'm going to break this down into the main components within the software. So what we're going to look at is 4 interactive views. There's 4 different views that you look at your software. One is the planning board. So as these service calls come in, they've got to be dispatched or assigned to various technicians to go do the work. Okay, so that we want to have a very interactive planning board, and Sheldon's going to show that. Also, being able to display the map. Okay, a mapping technology is also in play here, so we can actually see where the service call is, where the technician is, and who the closest technician is to that service call to go do that work. And then finally, the mobile device, typically an iPad or maybe a tough book of some sort, to be able for that technician to record what work they've actually done. And then eventually it falls back into the NAV system, into the service management to do the final billing. We're not probably today going to have much time to go on the NAV side. We're really going to focus on the first 3. And I just want you to see a preview of some of the things that we're going to be looking at. The first part is the planning board. So this is a graphical view, and Sheldon's going to show it to you live here in just a second, so stay tuned for that. And then we are going to this is where you'll see the technicians actually recording, you know, what they've done. They've accepted the job, they're traveling to the job, they've started the job's on hold, the job's incomplete, or it's complete. So these will change colors as the technician works in different phases of the job itself. Okay, the second part to this is the map. The mapping is very important. Now, this is a world map, but you may have a map of just, Chicago or just Miami, something like that, and your service calls may be in a very tight geographic range, but it just depends on the nature of your business. Some of our customers travel all over the world to do various service work. Others just travel within a given city. So you would zoom down to that city view or world view depending on the nature of your business. So I just did want you to understand that, and we'll show you this map functionality live here in just a moment. And then the third component is the actual mobile client. What does the actual end user see on his screen? Well, because of technology again and the advent of the internet capability and all that interconnectivity, that user can see the list of jobs. What you're seeing here is the job pool by date. Sorry, this is in French or German, I believe, but it's going to be a list of the jobs and how many jobs on a specific date are in the queue, basically. And so he can see that. They can see the list of jobs. They can go into the line items and the history and some other wonderful things. Sheldon's going to cover this here in just a second, so stay tuned for that. And then eventually, all of this is going to go into the back end. So, and it's going to change the status of your sales orders, or I'm sorry, your service orders in NAV to indicate that they have finished that work. Now, that doesn't mean it's been billed yet. It just means that they finished the work and they've put in the line items of what they use, what materials they use, their hours, and basically they're notifying the back office before that they have completed that work. Okay, now before I'm going to pause before I give this to Sheldon. So Sheldon, stand by for just a second. Before I kind of turn this over to Sheldon, because he's going to do the demo part here, I do want you to be sure you understand the connectivity. We're connecting the NAV software out to the dispatch board, out to the map, out to the technicians' workstation. All these things are all interconnected so that everything is as much real time as possible. But before we run into the demonstration, I do want to be sure that I've got the right people in the room and that you kind of get what I'm telling you here before we launch the live software. So if you would just grab your keyboard, for those of you on the call, and I appreciate having so many of you here today. This is wonderful. We've got 24 on the call so far. So there's a considerable amount of interest in this product. But just type in on the keyboard, I get it, or yeah, this is what I'm looking for, or I understand what you're talking about here. This is perfect. I can't wait to see the software. Perfect for my business. Let me know that you kind of understand what we've covered so far. Okay, so Julie says, I get it. Amit says, I get it. Daniel, I get it. Got it. Okay, Jeff Max says, yeah, got it. Thank you, Jeff, for joining. Josh, Mary, everybody, Francisco. Oh, wonderful. Jim says it makes sense so far. Mark says, I get it. Okay, everybody's on board with this. Excellent. Thank you for participating in that very simple, easy-to-use polling. Okay, so Sheldon, let me just get your microphone. If you check your mic, and I'm going to switch over to Sheldon as our next presenter. So Sheldon, I'm going to give you the screen here. And if you would just kind of let's make sure your screen comes up.
Okay. Got it?
There we go. Perfect. Excellent. Okay. You have the floor.
Good. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for attending. Today's world is probably characterized by we all work a day and a half in a day, so breaking away from your emails and your tasks is certainly a commitment, and we're hopeful that you'll feel by the end of this that it will have been worth it. Rick characterized the areas we're going to touch on. There's really three areas. and I'm going to spend time rotating around through 3 different screens. What you're looking at right now is what we call a planning board. This is, as you can quickly identify, is really a graphical system, and this is effectively a graphical system. So before we get into transaction processing, which we'll do, let's try and understand what we have here. On the left side, you'll see departments, and within departments, you'll see individual names. Each user is assigned to a department, and you can have as many departments as you want, and we can filter them, and I can show you that. All these things are collapsible. We can do things like, for example, I can collapse and expand any particular component I want, and we'll play with that a little bit as we move through. Just really talking navigation for the moment. If we look across the horizontal axis, the first thing you'll see is, of course, Tuesday the 16th, next to Wednesday, and then Thursday. So we're looking at calendaring dates and times. In here, we can also select ranges. We can look at a month at a time, a week at a time. We can look at an hour, an afternoon at a time if we want to really get granular. And we can look at that in a few minutes. But if you look just a little bit above the calendar range, you'll see a couple of boxes there. And one has a little filter on it. We have the ability to do filtering by departments and whatnot. We can do searches. So, for example, if I wanted to do a search on, I don't know, if I'll pick something here out of a hat, so to speak. I saw the name Spot somewhere, so I can put in Spot, and I can see I want to look at all occurrences of the word Spot, and I just click Go and let it go, and do a search, and it's going to come back and it's telling me any occurrence where it sees or identifies something with the word Spot in it. Come on, come to Papa. It's unusual. Sorry, we have a little bit of a problem here. Please excuse me on that. Searches always work. The demo demon is with us, so I apologize for that. So we have a lot of capabilities, and we'll spend time in here in searching for a new job and filtering, and we'll spend some time on that. But just above that, and Rick has also talked about that, is what we call the statuses. Every job is going to have a job status. Right now we've got these, so it's 7 or 8 defined here. They're all user definable. We can change them, and we can change the behavior of them. They go from simply appointed all the way up to urgent, and we'll see some examples of that. So in the middle of all this is where the actual jobs go once they've been assigned. So you'll see a number of jobs sitting here right now with different colors on them, which reflect a different status. So again, at one level, this is really nothing more than a basic Gantt chart, but it's really more than that, and let's explore that a little bit. The objective is to make a graphical representation of both the status of the different service orders, the where they're at, what the dispatch manager is playing with, what can he do, what can he adjust, what can he move around if things start to get bogged down in one particular area. So some of the standard things you would expect to see is, for example, the idea of drag and drop. So, for example, I can take this job, I see the spotlight, which is sitting on Daniel Boone, and I can move it up to Chuck Berry up here. I just grab it, take it, and move it, and away it goes. I can move anything from anywhere, given the authority as the dispatch manager. And besides that, though, it has some functionality. So if I look at that specific job I just moved, the one that says Spotlight, in this case, I'm going to right-click on it. Right-clicking brings up some other functionalities. I can do some things to it. For example, I can add a coworker. I can say, you know, I think Chuck needs some help on this, or perhaps I have another guy nearby. I'm going to send a coworker out to work on it, and I can attach it, and then the record will hit on both coworkers. If you look a little bit lower where it says lock, almost halfway down the drop-down, this is a capability that allows us to lock the job. So for example, let's say we have a service level agreement in place. This customer called at 1 p.m. and we have a, let's say it's a 3-hour service response time. It means I have to have someone there by 4 p.m. today. So I can lock that job in time. And doing that will mean by locking it in time, while yes, I may change it to another technician, I cannot change the time. So whereas before I just moved that job, I cannot move it in time. It stays locked to its time. Or I can lock it to a user. I can say, I know that particular client happens to like Trevor Moore. So I'm going to give the job to Trevor Moore. So I have some flexibility and some variability in that. And we can play with that in a few moments. Down below, of course, you see the job statuses, which is really a bit of a duplication of above. Okay, so let's try and experiment a little bit here. We're at the point where we're saying, okay, we want to understand what we're dealing with. We want to move away from whiteboards and file folders and spreadsheets and any of this incoherence that comes from multiple systems. We want to be able to see what's happening and set the stage to manage this effectively. So I'm going to leave this planning board for just a few minutes. We'll return to it. But before I do, I want to point out one more thing, is that parked behind all this is, I guess, what I'll call a queue of jobs. These are jobs that have been set up. Customers called in. You've taken the order. It's been set up in NAV, but it has not yet been allocated or assigned. The jobs you see here have been assigned. So what we want to do is at some point grab those jobs and start to park them onto this map, and we will do that. Before I do, I want to introduce you to the concept of the map. Rick had talked about that. So let me make a little bit of space here, if I can. Okay. Ordinarily, on an implementation, what we seek to do is we ask our customers to install 2 screens on the person's desk, or at least 2 screens on the person's desk, one with a planning board on the left, the other with a map on the right. Ideally, though, a better way is to put 2 large screens, 32 or 40-inch screens up on the wall. So we're a little bit squeezed for real estate here. You'll have to bear with me a bit. But these 2 components, the map and the planning board, are very much they're very related, and they're very linked. And let's explore that. What we're trying to do is make sure that, okay, if I'm a dispatcher and I'm going to send someone out to a job, I really want to know what's happening out in my territory. Those little guys you see on the map on the right, you call them avatars. We can zoom in for a moment. We can play with them. We can see the status, and we will do that. But I want to, for the moment, just show the relationship between what happens on the map versus the planning bar, the planning board. So if I put my cursor up on this gentleman over here, Rick Baxter, and I click on that, you'll see on the map a little avatar jumping up and down. Conversely, if I go over to the map and click on the avatar, and you now glance over to the planning bar, the planning board on the left, you'll see that yellow line come up. So this is the first indication that we have some relationship going on. I'll ask you, don't worry about that pop-up for a moment. The idea being that I want to, as a dispatcher, know physically what's going on in my region, and you'll see as well the various flags in place. Each of those flags is, in fact, a job, and the color that you see represents the status of it. Again, just as the avatars, I can click on them, and if I click on that one near Memphis, that red one, and you look over to the planning board, you'll see that Heartbreak Hotel is flashing a color. Conversely, I can put it on my mouse right on the planning board in Heartbreak Hotel, and the flag will jump up and down on the map. So there's some creative ways you can use this in the course of a day, and we can talk about that. But right now, what we're really doing is we're saying, okay, what's really happening in my geography? What's happening in my territory? What jobs do I have? What am I going to do with all this? I'm going to, in a moment, schedule a new job. Before I do, I'll point out one more small thing. If I put my mouse on this gentleman, Rick Baxter, you'll see a few things. I can see which jobs are nearby to him. There's a job that's 28 miles away. There's one 119 miles away. These are the jobs, but I can also see which other users are nearby. And each of those users, each one of them, is hyperlinked, each one of those jobs. So for example, if I had the notion to say, I think I need to send someone out to help this gentleman, and I bring it over, let's say this guy, Scott Beasley over here, if I click on that, it does something for me. It draws a line between the two. It tells me how far one service technician is from the other. And it tells me as well what time will that service tech arrive if he leaves now and gets on the road to go. Now, it's a bit of an example. We're not talking about doing these huge geographies. You'd probably be more likely working in a small municipal or regional geographic area. So, but the point is, you can make some assessments as who's nearby. If I need to bring up some backup support, where are they? Okay, so let's go back to the planning board, and we're going to talk about scheduling a job. If you look up at that little box there, it says schedule new job, almost at the top left. Let's see what we have here. I click on that, and it drops down another box, and I'm going to look for some service orders. And here I have a bunch of service orders. If I, for example, pick one just randomly, let's say this one, Tulane University. If I just click lightly on it, two things are going to happen. I'll click and I'll comment, but let me click first. Okay, two things have happened. That line expanded with some more description. It's got the service order number, the company, the address, and anything else that the customer wants. But we also see a star that's on the map on the right side. We move over to the right side, you can see that star. That's showing me specifically exactly where that job is located. I'll close it and let's look for another one. Here's another one. I have this Anna Maria over here. It's down in Florida. Or, for example, I could find anyone else. Here's one, Graceland Mansion. I think we know where that is. So the idea being that I haven't yet determined where or who I'm going to give this job to. I just want to know where they are. So in looking at this job, for example, Graceland, here's someone who needs some repair done to a banjo, a gold-plated banjo. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to take that job, and I'm going to drag it, and I'm going to place it up on, I'll give it to myself up here. I've always wanted to go to Graceland. So what I've effectively done, and I hope you can see it, is under my name, Sheldon Adelson, you'll see that job has just been placed, the gold-plated banjo, and it's sitting there. It is strictly appointed. I haven't accepted it yet. I can allocate a few more jobs. Want to try that? Here's one for the Dallas Cowboys. I can take it, and I'm going to put it up on the very top line that does not have a name. That's where we call assigning it to the group, and I'll comment on that in a minute. So let me close this little box. And you can see what we have here, and I'm going to just open up the planning board. We have allocated for tomorrow. I've plunked this down under the name Sheldon Adelson, the gold-plated banjo, and I've also allocated this job, goalpost repair, up on the job pool. Now we have this notion that says, I'm not sure that I really want to allocate a job to any one particular technician. I just want to send it maybe to a group or a team or what we call a pool. Maybe it's the electricians, it's the plumbers, it's the welders. So we use this notion called a pool, and I'll show you in a few minutes where it comes to play. So at this point, as a scheduler, I've got a bunch of jobs allocated. We can see what's happened today. I've got some jobs allocated for tomorrow. Some are in process, some are not. Life is good. I can maybe go have a coffee, and let's go see what life is like for the mobile individual, the guy out in the field. So I'm going to, I'll ask you to bear with me. I'm going to open up a little browser and bring up a third component here. This is what we call the mobile device. This is the mobile device. And what you're looking at here is an exact duplicate rendition of what would sit on an iPad, on an Android slate, or even a notebook. Rick had mentioned the Toughbook. We have a number of users who use Panasonic Toughbooks. It really is exactly what you're looking at. So I am coming in as a remote field technician. This is my device. I'm looking at this thing, and I'm saying, okay, what jobs are out there today? And you can see I have a couple of jobs that have been sitting there from yesterday. I got this one for Tuesday, and I got one for today, Wednesday the 17th. I'm just going to tap on the dashboard to make sure that all my jobs are here. And what it's doing is it's going out and it's going back to the server and saying, okay, these are the jobs you have, these are the ones you have, these are what you're supposed to work on. So I'll point out a few things before we get into this. There are a number of tabs. You can see those tabs across the top. The first one we're on says Dashboard. Then there's the job. We'll go into that and the lines of the job. We can look at items, and we can look at history and a few other things. Over on the right side, you'll see a little box that says Internal Messages. These are messages, like sort of instant messaging, the kind of thing that kids do a lot of. It's sending a message from the planner dispatcher out to the service technician. And again, just textual stuff. It's not tied to any transaction record. It's just for them to be able to communicate. And of course, it's able to keep timesheets for the service individual. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, I want to perhaps look at this job. Here's a job Jackson Venter. If I click on that, it brings me to the next tab called the job. Here's some details. On the top left, you see some work address information. There's a service item that's been noted in the middle column. There's some more information with regard to the customer. There is as well a further messaging capability that's specific to this particular customer order, unlike the one we just saw, which is kind of a general thing from the service dispatcher to the service tech. As well, there's an ability to send messages back to the office, so the service tech can be communicating with the dispatcher. And we'll explore the top right in just a moment. But at this point in time, the field tech can do a couple things. He can say, well, I'm not really sure I understand exactly where the customer is. So he can tap on location, and with the fact he's got some Google Maps or Bing Maps or whatever, he can just bring up a screen. He can see exactly where the customer is. He can even get directions if his own device has a GPS chip in it, which they all do today. So at this point, as a service tech, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to take this job. I'm going to tap on Start Travel. And all this is going to do is back on the planning board, it's going to note that job, and it's going to indicate that travel has started. So if you look carefully at the planning board where it says Anchor Chain, Jackson Venter, the color you will see is now that kind of turquoise sort of green. That tells the dispatcher that this guy's on the move. He's going to the job site. Any questions so far? Are we okay? Okay. So I'm going to go back to the mobile device. Go back to the mobile device.
Hey, Sheldon. Let me just, those of you on the call, I've had one person smart enough to know that you can put a question in the Q&A box anytime that Sheldon's going through his presentation, and I'll pick it up here on my screen as I'm kind of monitoring that and try to respond to you. And if it's something I think everybody needs to hear about at the end of the session, we'll talk about it there as well. But just be aware at any given time during Sheldon's presentation, if you do have a question, feel free to just type it right into your Q&A box, and I'll pick it up on my screen. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Okay, so here I am. I'm out on the road. I've been traveling, and I finally, at some point in time, get to the customer site, and I'm going to tap on this button that says Start Work. I will as well point out that everything you see here is customizable and configurable by the customer. So you have the layout, the coloring, the font size, what's actually here in terms of content, all that's defined in implementation. This is really a platform as much as it's an application. So I tap on Start Work. system now knows that I'm on site. I won't go back to the planning board, but the planning board will have changed color, and I'm underway at this point. Now, clearly I would probably do a couple of things. If I'm doing some diagnosis, you can see in the top right it has fault reasons. I might look at the piece of machinery, and I can, again, fill in as we so choose. This is a well, maybe it's never a manufacturing error, damaged by owner, right? And maybe it's got some noises, and the symptoms are that you know, it's unstable and whatnot. And I can save that as part of the record, and it's going to pull back into NAV. But let's spend a few minutes from the point of view of, okay, I'm here to fix this thing now. I got to do something with it. So I'm going to go into the various items I have, and this is what I probably have in my truck. What we have here is just a little kind of search. I can look for products, resources, or expenses. So just for the sake of argument, I'm going to put in the letter A here, just do a search. If I know what I was looking for, it'll be fine. But so here I get a screen that comes up. It shows me all the products that are specific to this customer and this item. And you can see what we have. And if you're familiar with an iPad or a slate, you know you can sort of stroke your finger along the length of it, and it'll just sort of swim upward. So what we have here is we have the items up top, and then we have some expenses on the very bottom. And over on the right side, you can see the resources. I can look only for example, products and not resources and expenses, and do a search, and then it'll give me just the product screen. So here I am. I'm starting to work. I'm going to fix this particular item, and maybe I take one of these and two of these and maybe three of these, and I can add them. And basically, I'm building up an order, if you will. You can see the yellow bars. It tells us what's happening. I've got 3 products added right now. I can continue to add them. I can say, well, instead of that, let me look for.
Hold on, your screen's a little bit behind you, so give it a chance to come up. There you go. Now it's working.
Okay. Sorry about that. So while I've identified the products I'm using, and one of the things we find a lot of customers tell us is they're very, very concerned that the service tech may make multiple trips out to the truck to pick up items. And they ask the question, how do we ensure that he is in fact aware of the fact that he's been, you know, accumulating and drawing down inventory? We want to make sure we have some inventory accuracy at the end of the day in our truck. So we'll take a look at that. But at this point, he can as well search for resources. Maybe he's got an apprentice working with him. So he's going to charge out the apprentice for 2 hours, for example. If we go down and look at the lines now, we're just tapping on it. You can see what we've got. Well, those are the items I've ordered. Those 3 items. Plus, I've got the apprentice working with me, and I'm logging him for 2 hours, for example. I'll draw your attention to those green bars on the left side of those lines. What this is telling us is these are items that the service tech has drawn out of his inventory in his truck to apply to that job. If, for example, it was a preventative maintenance and the order came down from NAV where he is prescribed to change a filter and a belt and do this and do that, those would come up in different colors. So it's merely a way for the service tech to realize, hey, these are items under my control. This is what my boss is paying me to watch and be careful on, so I'm doubly interested in doing that. So at a certain point in time, he says to himself, okay, I think I'm pretty well done. I've got this job taken care of. I want to now finish up the job. So by tapping on this little icon that says Finish Job, he has a couple of different choices here, if you will. If you look at the top left, you'll see there's, the way this is set up at least, 4 choices. He can say, okay, this job's complete, it's done, finished, no other work needs to be done, and he can just click on the radio button. Or, it may be a case of he says, gee, I really couldn't finish it. There's some piece I don't have the skills or something. He could send it back to planning by clicking on the second button. And usually what we suggest is that's the point at which you put a message in, I can't spell either. I can't fix it. So he could do that. Or he could say, well, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to end the day, but I'll come back tomorrow and continue on with it. Or alternatively, the fourth choice is, well, it's Friday, I'm not going to come back tomorrow, but I'll come back Monday. On Monday's a holiday, so I'm going to come back Tuesday. In any case, he's got a number of choices. I'm just going to close the job out to show you what it looks like. Before we do that, we can ask the customer for a signature, for example. And this is much nicer on a slate than it is with a mouse, so I'll ask your indulgence. And he can also print it. So here we have all the items selected with the signature. He can print it and give it to the customer. And additionally, when he's really done, when he's complete, he's just going to hit finish the job. It's going to ask him, are you sure you want to finish the job? And he'll click OK. And his job is done. If he goes back to a dashboard now, his job is gone. If we go back and look at the planning board, on the other hand, let's get that planning board back. That planning board is sitting right over here. I know it's a little tricky to see. It says Anchor Chain Jackson, and it's a zip code. The reason it's a very, very narrow sliver is because that whole process took us 4 minutes. If the job had been, of course, an hour, it would consume a considerably wider swatch of terrain there. So at this point, the planner knows that the gentleman, the service tech, has finished the job. The service tech can go on and start on to his next job if he has one. Let's do something now. I talked about the concept and notion of a pool job. And a pool job really says that as a dispatcher, I really don't care which guy on the team takes it. Somebody's got to take it, though. So I'm going to move a few of these jobs down. I'm going to leave them as a pool job. Let's go see what they look like from the perspective of the service technician. So he goes back to the dashboard, and if you look over on the right side, you'll see a little function key that says Job Pool. I'm just going to tap on that, and this brings up all the jobs that are sitting in the pool. And they're logged by date. You can see there's quite a few older ones in there. And the concept really here is that if I'm nearby, physically nearby to that, it's 1:40. I thought the job I was going was going to take me 3 hours. It didn't. I'm clear. I've got nothing for the afternoon. Let me find a job that's nearby, and I'll do it. So in this concept, the user can pick up any job. He can say, well, gee, I'd like to take this one for Graceland, and I'll take this other one for Dayton Power, for example. So he can select as many jobs as he wants, and he can accept them. And what it's going to do is two things. It's going to allocate them to himself. When I go back to the dashboard, here's Graceland. Whoop. There's a couple of jobs. And there's Dayton Power. But also, back on the planning board, it will show the planner that these jobs are now out of the pool, and they're allocated to this individual service tech. And away he goes. Now, there's a couple of other things the service tech can do. Among them, for example, and this may be a function of how your company chooses to do things, it can also create a new one on the fly. We have customers who they'll tell us that their service tech is on a job, and the foreman will say, okay, you know, you've got that one taken care of, but oh, by the way, while you're here, can you do this? Can you go do this? Or can you fix this machine or do that? Some companies want for their service tech to be able to accept to take a job and to create a new one. So you'll see over on the right next to the job pool, is a button that says Create New. And he can go in there and create a brand new job. He can create a brand new job for an existing customer that is part of your customer master. Or, again, based upon whether or not you choose to allow this to happen, he can create a brand new customer for which you've never done business before. Now, there's probably some process things you're going to want to lock down, but you can do that. So there's a lot of capability. All these little icons, all these choices here are really just, in a sense, they're objects that get plugged in here. So it's a very customizable environment. The other thing that we have here, of course, is there's a history capability. So, for example, if there was history in the job, if in looking at Dayton Power and Light, if he wanted to see if there was any history on it, maybe there's some service work or some warranty work that was done, he'll click on that and he'll have full visibility. There's no history here, but there is that capability. There are other things that we can easily incorporate here. Rick has another customer who currently wants to have forms inputted here, forms for ISO compliance. So we're going to simply just add a little tab, and the tab will open up and show all the different forms, and the service tech can say, okay, I need this one, and it'll draw the form up, and they can input the data they need to, and then that'll track back into the server and become part of the record as well. So that's kind of the 50,000-foot overview. I should point out, as I come close to concluding, that this really comes in two flavors. What we've been doing for this last little while, this mobile client that you're looking at right now is very much of what we call an online mobile client. It also comes in offline mode. What do we mean by that? Offline mode means there's really a database that sits on the mobile device, so it can operate offline. So, for example, in the morning, the service tech picks up his jobs, and let's say, for argument's sake, he's a service technician on machinery in a mine, and he goes to the mine. He's 300 feet below the ground. There's no connectivity. So it's, in certain instances, it's really valuable and important that they can operate offline. So he can continue, everything's here, full functionality, he can do everything he needs to do, and then when he comes back and gets some daylight and his connectivity, he hits a little button called sync. It's a little round fat button to synchronize, and it goes ahead and it pushes everything back up to the server and into NAV, and by the same token pulls down anything new that's been allocated to that service technician. So the fact that it runs both online and offline is really a strength. Many cases in our municipal areas, we've got pretty good connectivity, but it can be very iffy sometimes. So having the offline capability really is a big insurance policy. So that's kind of the high level of it. I have here actually something that maybe you might be interested in. It's a little, very short version of a video in action. I'll take the liberty of showing this to you. If you give me just a moment. It's good for me to watch. I remember there's something I didn't show you that I could easily have showed you. I'll just jump back if you don't mind for a moment. There is as well the capability to if the service tech has something like an iPad or a slate, they usually have a camera on them. So in the course of the job, they can actually take a photo, for example. I can show you a little bit how that works, but let me just find a job here. while they're into the actual job. Okay, this device doesn't have it, but there is as well a button here next to where it says location, where you just click on that, and it'll take a photo, and it'll attach it to the record. And the beauty of that, of course, is that with the photo, if it's a damaged item, for example, or a broken item, you now have some tracked record associated to it. So it's really quite a handy thing when we invoke it. So that's kind of the high level. Certainly any questions or any comments, happy to take them.
Okay, well, let me just wrap up a couple last comments, and then we're going to open up for Q&A, Sheldon. So I'm going to take the screen back. Excellent presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, so show my screen here. Okay, so the question for those of you on the call, and I'm just really excited that we had so many attend today, we have 22 on the call right now, is we really want your feedback on this thing. So I am curious, just your initial impression. If you just grab your keyboard and just let us know right now what you thought about this presentation. Was it amazing? Was it cool? Was it crummy? Was it not for you? You love it? Is it perfect? Let me, just type in, just take a minute right now and type in your keyboard your impressions of what you've seen. That would this make sense for your business? This would be good for our business, or I might want to represent this to one of my customers. If you're a NAV reseller on the call, you might want to be able to show this to one of your existing customers, or maybe a new customer. We'd be glad to assist you with that process as well. So just take a minute. Like, is this, you like it? It looks good, fairly good, excellent, however you think. So Josh says looks pretty good. Prasant says cool. Julie says I like the dispatch part, but I'm not sure about the mobile app. Okay, that's fine. Daniel says it's cool. Keith says looks good. I'd like to get a little pricing on this. Keith, we'll get with you on that one. David says looks like an add-on for the service module. How does it fit with jobs? I had a couple other people ask about jobs. Right now, the software is designed for the NAV Service Management piece. It is built on top of the NAV Service Management piece. It does not interface into our job or job manager piece at this time. So if you need that, let me know, and we'll kind of talk about what we can do to expand it to manage that one. Randy says it was done very well. Jim says NAV reseller. I look forward to mentioning this to the appropriate prospects. Sharon says this would be useful for our business. Looks great. Thanks, Sharon. If it's good for your business, let's talk afterwards. We do want to talk to you about the software. Mana says it looks like a good product. Mary says very cool. Mana says almost covered all the aspects. That is correct. We tried to cover as much as we could here in about 60 minutes just to give you some idea. But really what it takes is one more step on your part, and that is you've got to call us. The only way that we will be able to really help you move this forward or answer additional questions is you've got to let us know that this is something you want more information about. So if you need pricing, if there was something not covered that you want to see, we want a one-on-one presentation with your business, it's real simple. You just pick up the phone and you call us. We'll talk about it, and we'll see if we can't solve whatever kind of questions or problems you might have. The software, we realize, not for everybody. Okay, so it's only certain types of businesses that this is for. This is for somebody that, as you saw in the picture, somebody with a mobile service fleet that goes out and does service work at the customer location. That's what this is all about. Okay. So let me see. I'm going to open this up now for Q&A time, and I think I will pause. I'm going to stop the recorder So we got, and the recording, by the way, will be available on our website probably by the 1st of next week, and I think Katie will probably send you an email notification when and how you can watch the replay. Well, there'll be some instructions on that. So let me get the recorder stopped here, just a minute. And thank you for those of you that have been watching this on the replay as well. Again, feel free to contact us.